Hey, welcome to another edition of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I am Steve Harper, and I am super pumped, mainly because I get to interview a really good friend and supporter of the Ripple, friend of the show, who's been on the show before, Mr. Scott Carley. Those of you that have been following the show for a while probably remember Scott was on the show maybe about 2 years ago, maybe a little less. Scott's been a good friend and supporter of my work over the years, and I am super thrilled to have him join me today because we are going to be talking about his new book, Can I Trust You? The silent question everyone in business is asking. This book, I think, is going to get a lot of attention and it's going to turn a lot of heads because this guy is a gifted communicator. He's a gifted author, and he is really committed to helping you understand what it takes to actually build authenticity in terms of your working relationships, your personal relationships. And one of those real important things is being able to establish trust and creating environments to trust one another so that real things can be done. And I am super excited and glad that he agreed to come on so that we could celebrate the launch of his new book. So with no further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Mr. Scott Carley. Guys, I am super excited to have Scott Carley join me again. This is his second appearance on the Ripple Effect Podcast. Scott, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. I know we've been trying to put this together because you are like the world traveler right now. You have this new book that's come out. Can I Trust You? We're going to talk about it. You got people that are ordering books from all over the world. They're demanding you to come speak and learn about this amazing work that you've put together. And I know you're a hard worker. You are fully committed to the mission behind this book. And I just want to say I am so freaking proud of you and excited for you and all the doors of opportunity that are going to open to you because of this book. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I am equally excited, and I feel like that I've got a message, and it's timely, and it resonates with people. So I'm pretty stoked about what is unfolding again and again and again. So here we go.
I love it. Well, and if I was a really good podcast host, I would have like all the special effects that would like do a celebratory, party sounds or whatever. The last time I tried that recording, I killed the guest off the show. So I don't touch any buttons now. So maybe our editor will put in like a celebratory something, but tell me about what inspired you to write the book.
Well, that's a great question, and everybody asks it. Where did this thought come from? And it's a pretty interesting story. I have to get real vulnerable about it. But in my 20s, all my formal training is in theology. And so when I got out of high school, I went to a private Bible college in Houston and then up in California. And I became a youth pastor in LA. Then I became a youth pastor in Central Louisiana. And then I married a girl from my home church. And in our denomination, I traveled as an evangelist for 10 years in 47 states, and real quickly learned about, that really I was more gifted in helping churches develop their leadership and their executive team, and then how to double their congregation and all of that. Then I became a pastor for about 10 years and built a great church, 13,000 square foot worship facility. And then I let a staff relationship get too far, and I crossed the line.
Oh.
And when that happened, that lasted in weeks, not months. And I told my wife about it, and I told my church, and then I put in my letter of resignation. And my denomination took my license as a minister. Thank goodness that there was a mega church in Central Louisiana that still honored some of the trust credit score that I had accumulated over the years. And they brought me in to help restore my marriage and my family and give me a place to do some work as an event coordinator with that group. And I did that for a couple of years. So this book tells my story, actually, about me having great trust equity and then crashing it and losing everything.
Yeah.
And having to come back to a city, Austin, where nobody knew me in the business world. Nobody knew me outside of the church. And I had to inch by inch meeting by meeting, workshop by workshop, rebuild my trust credit score. And that's what I did. And so that the book is how I did that and what I found about that little phrase, can I trust you?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That's actually an aspect that I did not know about your life and sort of that early part of your career. Was it difficult for you to go back and revisit those times? Because I got to think that there's, that's an enormous situation to have lived through the first time. But when you write about it, I remember writing some things in my book that were a little personal and reliving some of the challenges that I faced growing up in a non-supportive family and some of the self-doubt that was sort of generated. And I found myself at times writing and just being like back to that 10-year-old kid that was in a really not a great environment, not a home, not a supportive, loving home environment, but one of turmoil and a lot of challenges, and one that really made me feel like crap, like as a person, right? And I actually found, and I'd be curious if you did as well. Not only was it hard to face it, but it was almost cathartic to face it, to actually come back and like pull that thing back out from the darkness and actually look at it from different perspective and with more mature eyes, and realize that some of the things, that happened and some of the circumstances, both good and bad, they weren't nearly as scary and as difficult to look at now as opposed to living through it back in the day. And so it was cathartic for me in a lot of ways, but it was still very difficult. And I can imagine for your circumstance, it had to be a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting process. And the story that I have told people for years is everything I just told you. But then I said, and my marriage had a train wreck. And so I had to transition into the business world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was preparing. I was at a workshop in Miami preparing for it's like a TED talk, and the coach who was there, he stopped me mid sentence and he said, "Train wreck? What does a train wreck mean? I mean, what did you do? Did you cheat on your wife or something?" And standing in front of 50 people who sort of know me, I mean, it was like we just ripped the bandage off.
We're going right there, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going right there. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, that's exactly what happened." And man, just the room was silent.
Yeah, I bet.
And I'm going, "Oh, this is not going very good." Well, I wrapped up that session, but it took me into a nosedive for the rest of that day and that night. And
Wow.
thankfully, there were a couple of people later that night that I met who pulled me back up. I mean, I was just humiliated in front of everybody,
Yeah.
and it was horrible. But over the next couple of days, as I continued to prepare for my presentation, I worked through a lot of that. I have to say that it was kind of blurry.
Sure.
I know I got up and spoke, and I didn't bring all that out, but oh my word. Well, then I just started processing it. And when I started thinking about the book, and that was like in October of last year, I started thinking about the book and how much I wanted to write a book about the trust credit score and trust and a concrete way to be able to measure why people do or do not trust you, and mostly how I rebuilt trust with my kids. My wife did eventually divorce me, and how I've established relationships. I'm remarried. I've got a great wife, a great blended family, and they all love me. But it was just rebuilding that. So I just started working through that. And each time I would tell the story, it got a little easier.
Sure.
I found a script that would work for me. And then somebody was coaching me about the book, and they said, your book is going to be nothing but just another one of those self-help books, unless you tell your story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you weave your story into that, now it's
Way
got
different. Yeah.
validation. And I went, "Oh, great, thanks." So now it's going to be really public.
Yeah.
And if you read it, I mean, in the first or second chapter, man, there there are boxes that have a part of my story and me talking about, well, in my story, this is what I had to do. And it turns out that that's what is making a huge difference in the book.
Yeah.
Because now when people read it, they're seeing, an MVP of trust and how you can make that happen, and a major trust crash and how to rebuild it. So I'm good now. My kids have read it, and of course my wife, she already knew about that, and so it was no big surprise to any of them.
Sure.
Oh my word, I don't want to go through that again.
Well, I think that and first and foremost, I intentionally wanted to interview you to celebrate the launch of the book. And for my audience, I haven't read it yet, but Scott's got an autographed copy waiting for me. We just have to get together in the same room at some time, and I can't wait to read it. But I will say, just completely out of respect for you, I know that whatever got put on that page, whenever, no matter how difficult it was or how challenging it might be, you approach everything in your life with that servant mindset. And, warts and all, that has such a huge ripple effect, which is you are truly one of my heroes. You are one of the people that I respect and admire so, so much, because you are someone who has gone through the fire and come out the other side. And you not only live to tell about it, but you teach people how not to make those same mistakes, not how to, or how not to, you know, uh, go about, living a life that they think they have to, but rather a life they want to. And you do that through your coaching, you do it through your speaking, and obviously now through this book. But I just have mad respect for you to put it out there like that, because not only does I think it add a texture to the book. I don't know who gave you the feedback. It would be just another self-help book without the story, but it's actually really, really good advice, because before anybody can connect to the good strategies and the good ideas that you put forth, they need to connect with you as the author. And when they see you on stage, or they watch one of your videos, or they attend one of your workshops, it's easy to connect with you because you're a very easy guy to connect with. In the written word, where someone may have never seen you perform or never been, lucky enough to see you, speak anywhere, it's different, and it's harder for someone to actually take, a book and say, okay, who is this guy? Never heard of him. Why would I want to know? But all of us have fallen down at some point in our life. All of us have screwed up or made mistakes. We have certain levels of, shame around that, and very few of us talk about it. But the only way you can heal is to talk through it. And by being open and honest and authentic, I think that is what plants the seeds of that trust factor that you're talking about. So tell us about the trust score, the trust credit score that you mentioned a few times. What is that? And really, what was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, the trust credit score is there are a lot of books out there that are written about trust, and I've read several, and they all have different segments and contributions to what is trust, where does trust come from, and what's it all about. And one of the things that is obvious about it is trust may start with what you say, but it's really about your behavior.
Sure.
And the trust credit score covers 5 areas. I'll talk about those in a minute. 5 areas, and I score each one on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being I don't trust you at all. 10 means that you have elite high trust with me. But nobody gets a 10 until I've known you for at least 90 days or longer.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen your behavior. You can
Yeah.
tell me anything, but I haven't seen your behavior. Well, one of the major things was it was really critical to me to rebuild trust with my kids.
Yeah.
What I did was a horrible thing, and it happened while they were in elementary school. They had to leave that school, and we moved to Louisiana. They changed friends, but they were very resilient, and they did really well. When we actually went through the divorce, their mother was one mad hen. And she is still one mad hen, but she wasn't reticent to tell them all the bad things about me that were there, and why I was such a bad guy. And I felt helpless,
Sure.
but I knew, or I discovered in reading, that I could create a behavior that could break through and overshadow her words. And that despite what was said about me, my kids could begin to believe in me. And it's not that they lost belief, but they just got big chunks of it knocked
Sure.
away.
Sure.
Somebody said one time, your actions speak so loud, I can't hardly hear what you're saying.
Hmm.
And I banked on that my actions and my behavior would make a difference. And so there are things that I know you can do to proactively build trust with somebody that doesn't like you. And there are some things that I did with them to help do that. And I outlined those in the book. And the five areas, number one, it's your body language.
Yeah.
People read your body language the moment you walk in the door, the moment they walk in the door. And
Unconsciously read it a lot of times. They're absorbing it, regard whether you say anything or do anything. It's happening in real time.
yeah, it is the way we dress, the way we look, eye contact, all of that. That's why I like on Zoom calls when people they're off camera. Okay, you just knocked your trust score down a little
Yeah.
bit because I want to
Can't
read your
see you.
body.
Yeah.
Be intentional about
Yeah.
what body language you see, you send, and how you're dressed, and your mannerisms, all of that. 55% of our communication is body language.
Yep.
Now, the other four have to do with your motives and your intentions. Show me your real motives and intentions, and don't be manipulative. The next one are your core values, your integrity. What do you believe, and does what you believe and what you say and what you act, are those congruent or are they not the same? And then the next one is your expertise. What is your skill set? Do
Sure.
you actually have something that you're good at, that you've mastered, you're an expert in, or you just all talk? In Texas we say he's all hat and no cattle.
Yep, we
And
do.
so,
Yep.
and then the last one is your track record. What have you done? Show me something you've done over a period of time. So based on those five areas, I created the scorecard.
Love
And
it.
I scored myself about how I was doing with my kids and then with people in the business community, because now I had a way to track it
Yeah.
and to influence it and to be proactive in an intentional, positive way. And Steve, it works. It
I
just
love
works.
it because I think what you're talking about is, I mean, how you overlap so perfectly with the work that I am so fascinated in doing is that connecting with another human being, they call these things soft skills, but there's nothing, soft implies simple and easy, and there's nothing simple and easy about talking to another human being. Just engaging with another human being has its own challenges, just inevitably, right? But to be able to break through that, to start to plant those seeds of rapport, which leads to the trust. And then trust is not something that you get and you earn one time. You actually have to continually invest in that. And I think a lot of people
It's
miss
fluid.
that when it comes to
It's
relationship.
fluid. It moves all
It
the
is
time.
fluid. Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
why I'm metaphors. I'm just a big champion on metaphors. If you could find a metaphor and write on the back of that to
Yep.
illustrate what you're talking about, my number one mentor spoke in metaphors and all of what he did. And the FICA credit score is the perfect example of what trust is built on.
Yep.
Because if you don't make your payments and you've got a bankruptcy and you're just in major debt, you can't call FICA and say, "Hey,
Fix me. Yeah.
I just, somebody was mean to me and they stole something." You can tell them all that, but
And
your
they don't
score
care.
won't change. They don't care, and your score won't change until you have behaved back into making your payments, saving some cash, building up some equity, and then your score will change. But if you quit paying your bills and you get on the wrong side of debt, then your score is going to come down.
Yep.
And when the score is high, doors open. When the score is low, doors close. And trust is exactly the same way.
I love that. What a perfect analogy for people to wrap their head around. And it's so very, very true. Do you believe trust can be built instantly with someone new that you've met, or does it always have to take time?
I think that a certain level of trust can be built very quickly. I was at a networking event, kind of a high-end networking event, and there was a guy that, I just met, and we're standing there, and, he told me a little bit about what he did, and he goes in and he helps companies that rebuild, who have, just hit a ditch, and they're trying to rebuild their team. And I think unconsciously, he told me the story that hit all 5 areas of what he did. And in his appearance, he was professionally dressed. He looked sharp. He wasn't overdressed or underdressed. He looked good. And then in his motives and intentions, he really wanted to help companies. He loves doing that. Feels like he's called to do it. And then his core values. Now, there's some people I won't work with, but these are people I did want to work with. And then I've got certifications in this. I got a background of 20 years in this. And I know what I'm doing in this. So certifications. And then, this is one of, 200 companies that I've done this with. So got a track record. Yeah. So my level of trust for him scored 8s and 9s, but nobody gets a 10 till I've known you for a while.
90 days. Yep.
Now you may get a 9, and it's not, I trust you, I don't trust you. It's on a scale of 1 to 10. 9's pretty high.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about trust being fluid. Share a little bit more about that in terms of helping people understand. One of the things that I do with my work, obviously, is try to encourage people to continue to make those social deposits. Just because you have connected and you've had great interaction, maybe you've been great friends for a long time, or you've had a great client relationship forever, doesn't mean that from here forward that's going to be the case. You have to put the time and energy towards that. So tell us a little bit about your attitude towards that, and maybe some ideas that you've maybe outlined in the book. You don't have to give away the secret sauce, but I'm sure you touch on that.
They're going to buy the book. If they want the book, they'll buy it. If they don't, whatever. I'll tell you what happened in a story. I was, I'm a speaker, and I do business coaching. And so financial advisors are among the ones that I've had a lot of success with. I've been able to help them focus on what matters, income producing activities, and learn how to network and all of that. And so I had a friend who was one of the partners at the New York Life office here in town. And so I said, hey man, get me an opportunity to speak to the agents. And he did, man. They had a meeting once a month or something, 140 agents. And so, Scott, you're on. Come up, talk to us about networking. Man, all right, I'll do it. So I came up, put a suit on, because I wanted to look the part, but I'm from Austin. And so in Austin, I didn't wear a tie, but I had a nice brand new, well, it wasn't brand new, but a new suit. So I went up there, did my presentation, and it was great. Eric, the managing partner, he was there for a little bit. And when I got finished, there were about a dozen people that signed up for one of my workshops. And I thought, man, this is a great success. Way to go, Scotty. And so I was looking around the room and, where's Eric? I can't find him. And my friend said, well, he's back in his office. And I said, well, can I go see him? No, you can't go in his office. Well, so the next week I tried to call him, and then he didn't answer, and his secretary wouldn't let me through. She's a gatekeeper. I sent him emails. I could tell he wasn't opening the emails. And so finally I went back to my friend. I said, what's the deal with Eric, man? We had a great response. A dozen people signed up. What's his deal? And he said, I don't know what you did, but you did something he didn't like.
Ooh.
And he didn't want to talk to you right now. So I'm thinking, great.
What was it? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I did, but anyway, I said to myself, Eric is an important partner to me. He's an important partner that I want to build a relationship with. Okay. Now notice I got a trust crash. My scores are down. How far down they are, I don't know, but I did.
And let me just point out before you go on, most people would have just given up at that point, like tuck their tail and go the opposite direction. So I love what you're about to tell us.
Yeah. In business, it's up to us to build relationships. We do business with people we know, we like, and we trust. And those are 3 different things, but
see, if I had one of those, celebration things, we'd be doing that. But
yeah, that's right.
I don't want to disconnect you. So
yeah. So I put together just some motivational cards, and I sent him a handwritten motivational card
Ah,
every month for 11 months. And it wasn't a sales pitch. It was just tips. It was things that you could do for time management, things you could do for networking. And I sent that to him, and no word, no word. I would send him my newsletter, and I could tell wasn't opened. He nothing.
yep.
And so after about, I don't know, 11 or 12 months, and that time of year when, that was the anniversary of that event, I went up to my friend. I said, dude, would you just ask Eric again? I know I can help these advisors. And if he'll just let me, I can help them make money, and it's him making money.
Yep.
And so he came back to me the next week and he said, Eric said he'll see you. I went, oh my God. And he
Yeah.
looked at me and he said, wear a tie. I said, a tie? Yeah, you didn't wear a tie. You better wear a tie. So, man, I did. I put on a sport coat, put on a tie, and I went to Eric's office. And so we were sitting there in his corner office, in the tall building looking over the Pennyback Bridge. And so he told my friend, he said, hey, would you go make some copies of this? And so he left the room. And Eric looked at me and he said, Scott, when you came over here a year ago, he said, I didn't like you. I didn't know you, but I thought you were a little arrogant. And that's not the first time people have said that, because I'm pretty confident about what I say. And he said, and you didn't wear a tie. We are New York Life, and we wear ties when we dress up. And then he reached under his portfolio and he pulled out this envelope. And he said, but you've been sending me these cards, and they have changed my opinion about you. And so get out your calendar, because I want you to come. This time it'll be to about 170 agents.
Nice.
And I went, oh my word. That blew me away. So what did you learn from that lesson, Steve?
There's actually several things, right? The fact that you did not give up, even though in 11 months you got no positive response whatsoever, that you continued to invest in trying to see what happens next. I think there's some value there. Obviously, as a speaker myself, obviously I would be like, I know what you probably felt in that moment when you got heard, when you heard about the tie situation, be like, that, didn't even cross my mind, right? We're from Austin. But know your audience, I guess, and understand who you're speaking to, and like you said, um, dress accordingly. I think is a real critical factor. It's one of the things I try to ask in every presentation I'm giving. Hey, tell me what you expect, right? Mainly because I went through a similar situation where I wore jeans to an event that felt like it was going to be a super comfortable environment. Lady that hired me said, "Yeah, come as you are." Okay, came with a jacket and jeans. Same kind of situation. I had one of the organizer committee people was not happy about it. So I get it, right? At that point, but I think the real thing is that trust, although it could be broken, can be regained with commitment and diligence, and don't give up. And you only get that next opportunity at bat if you're willing to put yourself back in the batter's box to do it. And sometimes that may take you a while, 11 months, but look at the value of the payoff, right? The juice is definitely worth the squeeze, even if it is a little uncomfortable, maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit of the blow to the ego and in your psyche. But I bet now you approach any financial investment firm that you might speak to a little bit differently than you probably did for that one. So I think there were multiple lessons. My spidey senses were going off all over the place at that story. I think is really good.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a learning curve for me, but it taught me a lot of things. And the strategy I used on him was the same strategy I used on my kids. And I would send them cards when I didn't have contact. Well, it wasn't I couldn't have contact. I had visitation times where
Yeah.
the kids came and stayed with me. But I mean, it was the crossing the T and dotting the I about
Sure.
when. I was not given any extra at all. And so I used that. Well, the other side of that story, or maybe the moral of that story is one of the partners that was there transferred to Bossier City, Louisiana, and then to Kansas City, Missouri, and then to San Antonio. And they have used me again and again and
That's awesome.
again because my trust credit score is high, and they've seen my behavior, and so that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about your FICO score, right? And the analogy that you used relative to that, the only way you get that score to move upwards is by making small incremental improvements along the way. And I have to align that with the 11 cards that you sent and the 11 opportunities that you did. You may not have seen or gotten immediate feedback, but you're making an impression. They're not sending it back saying return to sender, don't ever call me again. You didn't have any indications to say you were bothering this guy, and like you said, it wasn't a sales strategy. You were legitimately putting yourself out as the authentic guy that I know you to be, and I know that would ring true even with the hardest decision makers. So I mean, it's an excellent example of just don't give up. And even if you have somehow tarnished the trust factor in some capacity, or you maybe didn't get off to the best start with someone, if you don't give up and you're willing to be a little creative and think a little bit outside the box, and you're truly committed to actually build that into something, your actions speak louder than words. And so by doing that, I think is a huge, a huge tip of the hat to that. Obviously the result that's paid off dividends for you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. There's something that I want to comment on. You just briefly touched on something about doing nothing. There's an old saying, "No news is good news," and that is absolutely true.
Very not true. Yeah.
No news is bad
Bad
news.
news all the time, every
And
time.
so, not to do anything doesn't make it better, it makes it worse. It compounds because people have a tendency most of the time that when there's no news, they think something bad and
Yep.
they start writing stories in their head that are not good stories. And
That's
so,
right.
almost doing anything is better than doing nothing. And then there's another thing I want to point out about it. This is a trust credit
Yep.
scorecard, and the thing with that is you notice that there's these five categories, but
Mm-hmm.
the way it works is you score each one of those, and then you come down here to the bottom, total it, and divide by five. And so let's say that you don't have all nines, and you may have a seven in there, or you may have an eight, or whatever it is. Total them up, divide by five, and that gives you your trust credit score, just like it does for FICA. FICA doesn't pick one thing; they have at least a half a dozen things that they're scoring you on, and then they come up with a total. And
Yep.
so somebody may not knock it out of the park in every area, but if the area that they weren't great at wasn't horrible and they scored well in other areas, that's the average that you're looking for. And then if it's somebody you need to, you can have a courageous conversation with and say, you know what, you're a great employee. We really like you. And I want to move you up. I want to give you a raise. I want to give you a new position. But down here on number 4, skill set, you've got some areas that you're just not cutting it in. Do I need to send you to a workshop so that you can learn how to do that skill in a more expert way and become a master at it? If so, let's get you in there so that I can justify to the rest of the board why I'm giving you this promotion and this raise, and you're the person for the job.
Oh, I love that.
That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I think from a leadership perspective, right, having an understanding of that, being able to have an open conversation, not only are you helping guide and direct, which is what good leaders do to get the most from their people, but you're also building that trust factor, which has dividends, especially in today's economy, right? When you can help those people understand that you're investing heavily in them to improve their trust, credit score, to improve their credibility and their authenticity in who they are and how they show up at work, and deliver not only the technical and the tactical but all the other things that come into play. You're looking at the holistic person, which from a leader perspective has to feel amazing when someone actually leads you as the employee in that manner, because they are considering all aspects of what you bring to the table, not just what your specific job function might be or the skill set they hired you for. And I think that's really, really good. So I don't want that to be lost on anybody that's watching this or hearing this on any of the podcast platforms. If you're in a leadership or management role, or you're part of a group, it could be a nonprofit, could be leading your church, could be, if you are in a position where you actually have to inspire and motivate people, one of the great ways to do that is by utilizing some of the tools that Scott's outlined here to help you show and demonstrate firsthand the commitment you have to that person and helping them be the best that they can. Yes, some people will say, well, that's so you can get the most out of them as an asset, right? As part of our workforce. You could look at it from that perspective, but I would challenge you not to. I would say as a leader, your job is to bring the best out of everybody. And sometimes they need to know where some of those blind spots are. And I think this, trust credit score and the way that you approach it really, really gives a good place to start having those conversations and having some real depth to the building of the relationship in the coaching and the leadership aspect of what you do to bring the best out of them.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you wholeheartedly on all of that. One of the things about the generation that is starting to fill the workforce, actually has already filled the workforce, is they are looking for opportunities to advance.
Yeah.
And all my kids are in that, and they are in any level of profession. They're looking for advancement, and if they can't find that, if they get the feeling that their boss or whoever's running the position they're in or whatever, that oh no, you're just here, you click in, you click out, you go home, you click in, you click out, you go home. If that's all there is, and there's no advancement, there's no forward motion, that is among the reasons that the generation that's in the workforce now is not staying long at places, because they're moving. They want to move up. They want to better themselves, and they're not stuck on, I'm going to be somewhere for 20 years and get my gold pin and I'll be all right. I want to advance and move. And if employers and leaders can keep that in mind and say, okay, this is the way I see you right now, but in 3 years, I see you doing this and this too. And I'm going to spend the time investing in you so that in a year from now, I can move you into that place, and it won't be a leap. It'll just be a step, because we're already helping you to better yourself. And when you're better, we're better. Every employer that's thinking about it, if they hire somebody for $100,000 a year, they're hoping that person brings in $1 million worth of work.
Sure.
Or $500,000 worth of work. And so invest in them.
Yeah.
And make it a win-win situation.
I love that. Speaking of which, how is it that organizations are leveraging Can I Trust You, both from a book perspective and from your training and workshops?
So I just did a workshop for a law firm in town, and we just had a great time. And as we finished up the first session of the trust credit score and we identified what it was all about, I threw in there that, what this does is it creates you to become an elite high trust team that can take on incredible challenges and produce straight up legendary results. And man, a big smile broke out across her face, and she said, an elite high trust team. That's what I want us to be. And man, she just went in talking to him about it. Well, that's what I'm trying to do, is to come in, do the workshops and do the training so that whether it's the whole company or divisions of the company can learn the conversation and can learn the concepts of trust and the 5 signals that trust uses to build, and take it from there. Honestly, right now, I'm looking for a company that will let me come in and set it up from top to bottom.
Ooh,
so
okay.
that we can put posters up, we can do training, and we get into the conversation all the time of, okay, well, how's this going to affect our trust credit score? Has anybody had a courageous conversation with somebody on your team because they're slowing things down? How are you doing in sales? Are you building trust? Are you sabotaging trust? And get those conversations and that vocabulary started, because that's a game changer. It's a culture game changer for a company. And then, of course, conferences.
Yeah.
I love to be on stage. As a matter of fact, just before this morning at Toastmasters, I practiced a TED Talk that I'm giving, and it tells a story about my daughter as a prosecuting attorney and winning a case, and how her team came together and produced a legendary result for a family. It was great. So that's how I'm leveraging it.
I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, I definitely will. I'm gonna I'm gonna noodle on that. I'm gonna ask our audience to noodle on it, but most importantly, don't just think about it, but actually do something on Scott's behalf. Put Scott's name or the book in front of your senior leadership. Reach out to him and ask for some assistance on how you can get some of his tools in front of the decision makers, maybe for your next event or for your next conference. I promise you, I've seen Scott speak in person. He is a dynamic, engaging speaker, but I got to appeal to everybody's sensibilities. This is such an important topic. This isn't just another thing that we need to think about. This is the thing we need to talk about. Trust is paramount to every aspect of your life, whether it's your personal relationships, your professional relationships, how you're building your business, how you're keeping your employees, how you're keeping your customers. All of that ties directly to what Scott's talking about. So understanding and knowing where you're at and where you need to improve, and not only as an individual or as a leader, but also from a team perspective, I think is so absolutely critical. You made me think of something, Scott, that I know that you've probably heard. Zig Ziglar always had these amazing one-liner kind of, and these little short little parable stories. But he said when he was responsible for training and or hiring and training new salespeople for one of the organizations he worked on or worked for early in his career, he knew that he didn't have a lot of margin for error, right? So there would be a lot of emphasis on, if you hire this person, they need to be successful. And so one of the things that he did was, because most of what they did way back, in that generation, 60s, 70s, when, cold calling was a real thing, and, people would leave the office and wouldn't come back till 5. And you had to have that trust that they were doing what they said they would do. And he was talking about, the one way that you could evaluate your talent was how many business cards they walked back in with, right? And he would take that, those cards, and he would ask the sales rep, well, tell me about this one, tell me about that one, right? And he would know who was BSing him, because they wouldn't actually have a story. They wouldn't have any real recognition of the conversation that took place. And it became very obvious that they were just out collecting cards and not really doing a great job pitching the business. So he knew that his success and his performance was directly tied to how well the people that he was in charge of did. So he didn't want to have any losers, right? So he didn't want to have any misses. And they had, at that point, had already had quite a few, and he knew it was reflecting really poorly on him. So one of the things that he started doing was, before they actually started their job, was he would take every new sales rep out for a round of golf. And his perspective on golf was, this is an individual sport, competing with 3 other people that are usually in your foursome, right? And but really, it's kind of a trust game. If you say you hit it, 3 times before you got on the green, that's what it is. Except when somebody's paying attention to what you really did. Did you kick that ball out of the rough? Did you, you know, did you actually whiff the ball and looked around, made sure nobody's looking, right? And one of the things I remember him saying, I was at a conference, many, many years ago when he was speaking, and he said, the one thing that you can't hide is integrity. And integrity is completely tied to trust. If you have somebody that has integrity and they stick to their core values and their ethics, and they show up and they are authentic and they really want to do a good job, not because that's what they're paid to do, but because that's who they are, you have a winner. They might be, rough around the edges. They might need some coaching and some coaxing around how to get better at their job. But at the end of the day, if you start with that foundation of, they know they can trust themselves, then and they can be trusted by others, that's a big thing. So he said what he recognized is almost, I don't remember the number, it was very high, like 7, 8 out of 10 people they were bringing into this organization would cheat at some point during golf. And what he would do is he would wait, wouldn't say anything on the course. He'd let everybody tally up the scores, but he had always been keeping score on the side, watching what they did and taking note. And so somebody would say, here's what I shot for my round. And he'd be like, well, that's not how my number worked out. Let me tell you why I thought that. And nobody knew he was keeping a second scorecard. And he said, what you generally found is the people that you knew would be untrustworthy, that wouldn't do the job, wouldn't show up and make the calls, or would come in with a stack of business cards and all they had done was collect them, but not actually really pitched. Those people were never going to be successful long term with the organization. He said, I just figured I'd just shortcut that and get to the end and say, look, if you lied here before you even started with me, how can I trust you to be
Yeah.
honest after I start paying you?
Yeah.
And I just remember that sticking out so vividly about how important that is. And so nobody tells you when you get up each morning how you're going to go and conduct yourself during the day. It's up to you to decide how you're going to go out. You get an opportunity to create a positive ripple or a negative ripple. You get a chance to make a difference for your coworker or the team you lead or the clients you serve. You get an opportunity to do that. They trust you to do it right, but it's really within yourself that you have to trust, that you have to go and literally do the work. And if you're already inclined to fudge a little bit here and fudge a little bit there, the trust factor will come back to bite you, and that trust, credit score will plummet considerably when people find out you're a fraud.
Oh, yeah. I love that story. And all of that is very true. I heard somebody, Stephen Covey, wrote in his book, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. Yep.
That's so true. You know, it's drop, it's drop, it's drop to build trust. You fill it up, draws. But when you lose it, and sometimes you don't lose it all, but you lose buckets of it at a time, and then oh man, I got to fill that back up. Somebody told me one time, I heard this long time ago, and they said this is so true. Somebody who gossips to you
Well,
will
gossip.
gossip about you.
Yes.
Somebody
Yeah.
who tells a lie with you will tell a lie on you, because it's not about you or them. It's about they are a gossiper or they are a liar. And I have always remembered that. And it kind of just records back here in the back of my mind. And it has changed the way that I do some things and the way I observe people and the trust credit scores that they get with me. You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking
I'll,
about.
I'll, I'll share a real quick story with you. I won't reveal any names here, but before you and I actually officially met, I had heard your name, and someone that we both know in common, another speaker, hadn't said very kind things about you. And I don't even remember the circumstances by which you and I first connected, but I think we were, someone introduced us, and I had made the comment that I was going to be meeting you, but I hadn't met you yet, right? And I made the mistake of saying I was going to meet you, and I knew you were involved, the National Speaker Association, and all the things that you were working on at the time. And this individual's, just kind of, yeah, I just don't know. And I was I was really kind of taken back that there was sort of this attitude about it. And I kind of recognized that I think there was a little bit of jealousy. There was a little bit of, Scott's got something I don't have. And after I met you, I knew you had something that they did not have. But to your point, I lost immediate respect for this individual then, because it was unnecessary, and B, I didn't feel like it was based in fact. I thought it was more based in fear. Maybe you guys had gone up against each other for a couple of opportunities. Who knows, right? So anyway, what I was really proud of myself for doing, which is it was a stretch for me sometimes, was to not listen to what I heard before I actually met you and let that cloud my judgment. And in light of everything you shared earlier, right, I don't want you to think it was like, somebody was just bashing you or anything, but at the end of the day, I wasn't sure who I was meeting, but I was committed to, like, close out all the noise, and I was going to let you and I figure out whether we could be friends or there was something there. And what immediately struck me was, oh, I know why this person says this, because this guy is the real deal. This guy's not putting on airs. He's not trying to pretend he's something when he's not. He's not. He's lived his life. He's done some things. And I mean, you alluded to, having some struggles early on, and then making this huge transition, but you didn't really, I didn't ask and you didn't tell me the whole story, right? But at the end of the day, what you didn't do was concentrate on the negative. You actually, in that first meeting we had, talked about the lessons you learned through the struggles you had and how that's informing your work and why you were committed to, working on the assessments that you were doing at the time, the type of work that you were looking to do for clients, and why you got so genuinely excited to share the message. And I remember walking out of there going like, man, that guy has confidence. He's a guy I like instantly. He's a guy that has something I wish I had. I wish I could just, take a little Scott Carley IV on a daily basis, have that confidence. I don't have that walking on stage. I love doing it. I
Well,
love.
you would fool anybody because you look so very confident, and
I
you
appreciate that, but no, it's not my natural state. But you actually gave me encouragement during that first meeting, that I had something that I could use and leverage. And I really, really, really appreciated that. And the thing that I think is so amazing about the fact that this has kind of come full circle and the work that you're doing now and with this book, which I'm super proud of you for, is the fact that you are who you say you are. And I think at the end of the day, one of the big factors for our entire audience is when you have to put on airs or you have to shift how you are, what you do in order to impress somebody, whether it's a prospective client, conference organizer, or that man or woman that you're trying to date, and when you put that on, people will figure it out pretty quickly. It may not be instantaneous, but it eventually comes back to bite
the
you.
truth always,
Always comes through. Yeah.
the
And
truth
like you said,
always.
at the end of the day, the people that can't are the people that talk. You show up and you just do, and you do it with a servant mind. And clearly you've had some things that have happened in your life that have informed who you've become today. But I know God is smiling down on you because he's got to be so damn proud of you, because you are creating such amazing ripples in the world with your work and just being the guy you are, honest, truthful. You've got the kind of aura that people want to invest in, and they want to trust, because you've been there, done that, and what it takes to, like you said, recover that trust credit score and make something significant out of your second or third or fifth chance, right? Whatever it might be. Not everybody has that. And I think it's just amazing. What I would love to leave my audience with is the fact that no matter what mistakes you've made, the missteps that you've had or the challenges that you've overcome as an individual, we all have them. The sad thing is that we attach a level of shame to them, and we never address them and never talk through them or never ask for forgiveness or go through the process of forgiving ourselves, which means then we're still putting on a little bit of an act and you're not being your authentic self. Once you can face those demons and say, that taught me a whole lot of shit that I need to get fixed.
Get help with that. Don't face them by yourself. Get some help with
Exactly.
that, and because there's somebody just told me something that really impacted me. You can't read the label of your bottle from the inside,
I love that.
and that's really true. We can't see ourselves.
That
I will tell you, Steve, that I have discovered people either like me or they don't like me, and there's very few that are just in the middle. And I have discovered that I don't always make a good first impression because I am, innovation and take action confidence are two of my characteristics that I'm just naturally gifted in, and it pushes on people, and there are people who don't like that. But after those people get to know me, if they will, like you did,
yeah.
go ahead and go through that, then most of the time they make the transition just like Eric did. And he said, I like this guy. We
Yeah.
want him here. And so thank you for all those things. Now I got to live up to all that stuff. But I'm looking over your shoulder right now. And ever since we've been here, I'm seeing the ripple.
Yep.
And when I don't know when you first put that out, but when I first saw that you were putting that out and you did something every day there was a ripple, go make a ripple.
Yep.
I've never forgotten that. And you made a big difference in me being proactive about making positive ripples in people's lives,
Thank you.
because that's a real thing. We make a ripple. We all make a ripple.
Yep.
Is it a good one or is it a bad one?
That's right. We all have the choice every single day.
Every day.
I love that, Scott. I could talk to you about this all day. I just love spending time with you, and anybody that is going to see or hear this podcast is going to know that there's a strong friendship here. I'm such a committed supporter of your work because of the way you go about it, how you do it, what and now that I've learned a little bit more about you today, just where you've come from and how you've rebuilt that trust credit score, and how you're passionate about helping other people do the same, or take it and run with it and continue to add and build on it. What final message might you want to leave our audience? We're going to end this episode, just for those that follow me. If you did not catch our first episode, you need to go back, because we asked the Ripple Connection questions to Scott at that point. So we threw all the crazy questions at him and he answered them. Go back and catch that episode. I did not want to do that for this one, because I really want to put all the emphasis and focus on this amazing work and this incredible guy that we've brought to the table today. So, Scott, how would you want people to get engaged with what you're doing, and what's the best way to contact you or get involved in the work that you're doing?
So it's easy to find me. ScottCarley.com will take you to my website. If you're looking for the book, you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, anywhere, and put in Scott Carley, and the Can I Trust You will show up. Now, if you just put in Can I Trust You, there's 3 or 4 romance books. My book is not a romance book. So you might want to put my name in, and you can find the book and get it. In the back of the book, there are several QR codes that can connect you with me. And if you want a speaker for your company, for one of your events, and you need a motivational speech, or if you want me to come in and do some training on the trust credit score, I've got some other stuff as well, just contact me. You can book a call with me. Call the Energizer. That's my brand. I'm the Change Energizer. Call the Energizer.com, and it'll take you to my scheduler, and we can book a call. I'd love to visit with you. I love what I'm doing.
It's
I was
obvious.
called to the ministry. I am called to what I'm doing right now. I am helping people take their bucket list goals across the finish line, and you do that with a high trust credit score.
I love that. I love that. Scott Carley, you are one amazing guy. Thanks for being a friend. Thanks for being a supporter of my work and what we do. I want to return that favor in kind. I want to ask all my audience to go out and get your book, and reach out to you, connect with you, bring you into their companies, bring you into their next events. And you and I are going to find some ways to, continue to promote one another, and maybe share the stage at some point very, very soon.
Oh, I'd love that. That would be a blast.
That would be a total blast. I just want to say thank you. And most importantly, I want to say congratulations, because you deserve all the success that is coming your way, my friend. And you are making a difference out there in the world. When people think of a Rippler, Scott Carley is right up there on that top of the leaderboard, because you are out there creating and making a difference in people's lives. And we're all here for it. So we thank you for it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the feeling's mutual, ditto.
Thank you.
I do remember our first meeting, and I came to your office. I do remember that, and I appreciate
it. Was a fun one. We did 30 minutes, and then we ended up spending almost 2 hours together, I think.
Yeah, it was great, and I deeply appreciate all of that. And it's great to have friends like this. They say, if you see somebody you admire and you want to be like them, hang out with them, and in a year or so you'll be just like them. So I want to be a Rippler too. So thank you very much for the invitation here today.
Well, thank you. And we definitely need to hang out a little bit more in person, not just through the,
That's
the
right.
2D
That's
world, for sure. Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you guys for joining us for this episode. I know you learned a lot. I know there was a lot of great information that Scott presented to us. Make sure that you reach out to him and tell him how much you appreciate it. And as always, we'll be back with another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast very soon. But until then, Scott, ripple on.